I'm Samantha, I'm 34, and I live in Atlanta with my daughter. Right now, my life looks pretty good. I have a successful online platform centered around motherhood. I work with brands I admire, and I have the flexibility to be truly present for my child. I've built a community of incredible women who support each other, and honestly, they've supported me more than they know. But getting here wasn't easy. It involved a kind of pain I never thought I'd experience, especially not from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. It's a story about how the silence of others can force you to find your own voice, and how building your own table is always better than waiting for an invitation that never comes. My story really begins with a moment that should have been filled with joy and anticipation, but instead was steeped in disappointment and, frankly, cruelty. It was the moment I shared the news of my pregnancy. I wasn't married. That fact, in the eyes of my family, seemed to erase the miracle of new life and replace it with shame and inconvenience. I was told, directly and implicitly, that this wasn't a big deal. Not like a real pregnancy. Not like a pregnancy that fit neatly into their expectations. There were no excited phone calls, no offers of help, no planning for a shower. There was just silence. And judgment whispered around the edges. This wasn't just a lack of enthusiasm, it felt like an active withdrawal of support, a punishment for not following a script I hadn't even agreed to. Let me tell you, there's a unique kind of hurt that comes from being dismissed by your own flesh and blood. It hollows you out in a way that external criticism never could. It makes you question your worth, your choices, even the validity of the life growing inside you. For a long time, I carried that hurt, letting it shape my view of myself and my place in the world. But eventually, that pain became the fuel. It pushed me to seek connection elsewhere, to build something for myself, to prove, if only to myself, that my experience, my motherhood, my life, was not only a big deal, but something beautiful and powerful. It led me to create the very platform that now brings me so much fulfillment and allows me to connect with so many of you. It's ironic, isn't it? The thing they dismissed is now the source of my strength, my independence, and even their renewed interest. I want to share the whole story with you, the raw truth of what it felt like, the struggle to rise above it, and the unexpected way things have come full circle. Maybe parts of my experience will resonate with you. Maybe you felt unseen, unheard, or judged by the people you expected support from. Let me know where you're watching from, and if any part of this already feels familiar. It was a humid Atlanta afternoon when I saw the second pink line. I remember trembling, not just with nerves, but with a quiet, profound awe. A tiny human forming inside me. I was 32 years old, single, and living in a small but cozy apartment I'd worked hard to make my own. Motherhood hadn't been something I'd planned for right then, not in this exact way, but the moment I saw that line, a fierce, protective love ignited within me. My first instinct was to share the news, to call my mom, my sister, the people I thought would be excited for me, regardless of my marital status. I started with my mother. Her reaction was muted. "Oh," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the warmth I'd anticipated. "Well, that's unexpected, Samantha." Unexpected felt like a polite word for disappointment, maybe even disapproval. There were questions about the father, questions about how I would manage, questions that felt less like concern and more like an interrogation about my poor life choices. The conversation was short, clipped, and ended with a vague, "We'll talk more later." Later never really brought the warmth or enthusiasm I'd hoped for. Then I called my sister Sarah. Sarah, 2 years younger than me, had always been the golden child, the one who followed the script. Married right after college, 2 kids by 30, living in a house that fit the suburban ideal. Our relationship had always been complex, a mix of sisterly affection and underlying rivalry fueled by what I perceived as blatant favoritism from our parents. I'd hoped this news, this shared experience of womanhood and potential motherhood, might bring us closer. "I'm pregnant," I told her, trying to inject as much joy into my voice as I felt. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then, a sigh. "Oh, Sam. Are you sure? What are you going to do?" My heart sank. What was I going to do? I was going to have a baby, love it, raise it. The same thing she had done, albeit with a husband by her side. Her reaction mirrored Mom's, but with an added layer of practical, slightly judgmental concern. I'm going to be a mother, I said, my voice losing some of its earlier buoyancy. Right, well, she said, her tone shifting to something vaguely pitying. It's just not exactly ideal, is it? Doing it alone. That was it. Not congratulations, not excitement, just a focus on the perceived difficulty and the deviation from the norm. The subsequent conversations with family members followed a similar pattern. My father was gruff, but less overtly critical, mostly just echoing Mom's muted reaction. Aunts and uncles offered polite, strained well wishes that felt more like condolences. The weeks that followed were punctuated by this chilling lack of celebration. There were no congratulations cards in the mail, no excited calls asking about symptoms or doctor's appointments. My cousin announced her engagement a month after I shared my news, and the family group chat, usually dormant, exploded with heart emojis and exclamation points. Wedding planning became the dominant topic at family gatherings. My pregnancy, meanwhile, remained the elephant in the room, large and undeniable, yet completely unacknowledged in any positive way. It became painfully clear as my belly grew. My sister Sarah had 2 baby showers, elaborate affairs with themes and games and overflowing gifts, hosted by our mother and aunts. There were registry checklists shared with enthusiasm, group emails coordinating help after the baby arrived, a whole community mobilized to support her journey into motherhood. For me, there was none of that. I navigated the morning sickness alone, researched strollers and car seats alone, painted the nursery alone. The silence around my pregnancy was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of parties or gifts, it was the absence of care, of recognition, of basic emotional support. My family, my own family, made it abundantly clear that my pregnancy wasn't something to be celebrated because it didn't fit their narrow definition of what a family should look like. It wasn't legitimate enough, wasn't proper enough, wasn't a big deal. That phrase, wasn't a big deal, echoed in my head constantly. It became a shorthand for their dismissal. Every time I felt a kick, every time I saw the ultrasound photos, every time I packed another onesie into the dresser, that little voice, their voice, whispered that it wasn't a big deal. It minimized the immense physical and emotional undertaking I was experiencing. It minimized the life growing inside me. It minimized me. The quiet hurt curdled into a deep, simmering resentment. Why did Sarah deserve showers and support simply because she had a ring on her finger? Why was my journey no less miraculous, no less challenging, treated with such indifference? Was their love truly conditional on me following some prescribed life path? I remember sitting in my quiet apartment one evening, weeks before my due date, scrolling through photos from Sarah's second shower that someone had posted online. There she was, glowing, surrounded by beaming family members, unwrapping tiny outfits and baby gear. And here I was, huge and uncomfortable, feeling utterly alone. The contrast was stark, brutal. Tears streamed down my face, silent and heavy. It wasn't just about the gifts. It was about the tangible expression of love and support that was so freely given to her and completely withheld from me. That night, something shifted. The pain was still there, a raw wound, but underneath it, a tiny spark of defiance ignited. If they wouldn't celebrate this life, I would. If they wouldn't support me, I would find support elsewhere. If my family didn't see the value in what I was doing, then I needed to build a world where my value and the value of my child was unquestionable. The isolation of those months pushed me online. I joined online forums for single mothers, due date groups, communities focused on conscious parenting. Slowly, tentatively, I started sharing my fears, my hopes, my frustrations. And to my astonishment, I found connection. I found women who understood, who weren't judging, who offered genuine encouragement and solidarity. They celebrated my milestones, the first kick felt, the successful glucose test, the nursery finally finished, with an enthusiasm my own family had lacked. These online connections became my lifeline. They filled the void left by my family's silence. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my journey was valid, and that I was capable. This was my first taste of building my own community, a community based on shared experience and mutual support, not on blood ties or societal expectations. The idea for the platform didn't come overnight. It grew organically from my own needs and the needs I saw in the online groups I was part of. I noticed a lack of authentic, unfiltered conversations about motherhood, especially for those of us navigating non-traditional paths. Everything felt curated, perfect, and frankly, a little isolating in its aspirational flawlessness. I wanted to create a space for real talk, for messy moments, for celebrating the small victories and commiserating over the tough stuff. I wanted a place where mothers felt seen, heard, and empowered, regardless of their relationship status, their birthing choices, or the perfectness of their nursery decor. I started small. A blog, initially. Writing late at night after my daughter, Lily, was asleep. Pouring out my experiences, my fears, my learning curves as a new mother. I wrote about the exhaustion, the overwhelming love, the moments of doubt, and yes, the lingering pain of my family's reaction. I was raw, honest, and vulnerable. And people responded. Other mothers, feeling the same isolation, the same pressures, the same need for genuine connection, found my words and reached out. Comments turned into emails, emails turned into direct messages, and a small, dedicated readership began to grow. It was slow progress, fueled by sheer determination and the desperate need to turn my pain into something positive. I taught myself how to build a simple website, how to use social media effectively, how to create graphics. Every late night spent working was a quiet act of rebellion against the idea that I wasn't a big deal. Every new reader, every supportive comment, felt like a small victory. I was proving them wrong, not with anger or confrontation, but by quietly building my own world. As my platform grew, I expanded beyond the blog. I started a small, private online group for my readers, a safe space for deeper conversations. I hosted live Q&A sessions, sharing what I was learning about motherhood, navigating single parenthood, and finding strength in unexpected places. The community blossomed. Women shared their stories, offered advice, and cheered each other on. This was the support system I hadn't had, and it was incredibly powerful to be both a part of it and the catalyst for its creation. The work was immense. Juggling a newborn, then a toddler, while trying to build an online presence from scratch required every ounce of energy and discipline I possessed. There were days I was so tired I could barely see straight, days I doubted if any of it was worth it. The unseen labor wasn't just the childcare and the household tasks I managed alone. It was the emotional labor of processing my hurt, the mental labor of creating content and engaging with my audience, the sheer physical exhaustion of doing it all with minimal sleep and no family safety net to fall back on. My family, during this time, remained largely distant. They saw Lily occasionally, usually at holidays, interactions that were pleasant but superficial. They never asked about my work, never inquired about the platform, never showed any interest in the world I was building. It was as if, having deemed my life choices suboptimal, they had simply filed me away in a mental box labeled manageable disappointment. Sarah was busy with her kids' school events and soccer practices, posting endless pictures of her picture-perfect life. Mom still occasionally offered unsolicited advice on childcare that felt subtly critical, but the topic of my work never came up. It was a relief, in a way. Their disinterest felt less painful than their judgment. Then, things started to change. My platform reached a tipping point. My readership grew significantly. I started getting approached by brands interested in collaborating. The first offer was small, a free product and a modest payment for an Instagram post. I remember staring at the email, my heart pounding. It felt like validation, not just of my work, but of me. It was external proof that what I was doing had value, that my voice mattered, that my life, unconventional as it might be, was indeed a big deal to others. More offers followed. Some small businesses, then larger, well-known brands. I learned to negotiate, to understand contracts, to see the real value in the audience and community I had cultivated. The income from the brand deals, combined with the platform's growth, gave me a level of financial independence I hadn't anticipated. I could provide for Lily comfortably, save for her future, and have some breathing room for the first time in years. This success, however, didn't go unnoticed forever. Social media has a way of making things visible. My sister Sarah, who followed me online, mostly out of obligation, I suspected, started seeing my sponsored posts. She saw me working with brands she recognized, brands she probably used herself. The casual mentions began subtly. "Oh, I saw you worked with that stroller company," she'd say during a brief phone call, her tone casual, perhaps a touch probing. "Are they paying you for that?" I'd confirm, keeping my answers brief. I wasn't ready to share the details of my hard-won success with someone who had been so dismissive of the foundation it was built upon. The inquiries became more frequent, less subtle. "Wow, another one? You're getting a lot of those brand deals, aren't you? How exactly does that work? Do they just send you free stuff?" Her questions had an edge to them, a mix of curiosity and something else I couldn't quite place. Envy? Skepticism? A dawning realization that maybe my unexpected path wasn't so bad after all. Then came the request. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, Lily at preschool. My phone rang. It was Sarah. We usually only spoke a couple of times a month, quick check-ins that never delved below the surface. "Hey Sam," she said, her voice overly bright. "Hey Sarah. Everything okay?" "Yeah, fine. Just calling to chat." You know. We made small talk for a few minutes, the weather, Lily, her kids. Then she steered the conversation towards my work. "So, about your platform," she began, hesitating slightly over the word, as if she still wasn't entirely sure what to call it. "It seems like it's doing really well." "It is, thank you," I said, cautiously. "Yeah, Mom mentioned she saw you on some list or something. Like mommy bloggers or something?" This was news to me. I hadn't known Mom paid any attention. "Oh, I wasn't aware of that," I replied, trying to sound neutral. "Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking, you know how you do those brand deals? Here it comes," I thought. My stomach tightened. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice steady. "Well, you know my friend, Jessica? She just started selling those. What are they called? Essential oils." I knew where this was going. My heart sank further. "Right," I said, prompting her to continue. "She's trying to get her business off the ground, and I was telling her about your platform. You have all those followers, right?" "I have a community. Yes, I made the deliberate choice to use the word community instead of followers." "Right, community. Well," she was thinking, "maybe you could give her a shout-out? Or do one of your brand deal things for her. To help her out. As a favor." As a favor. The words hung in the air. A favor. For her friend. Leveraging the platform I had built from the ground up, alone, with the very resources they had withheld from me, support, encouragement, belief. I felt a wave of emotions wash over me, disbelief, anger, a bitter kind of irony. My sister, who hadn't bothered to send a card when I was pregnant, who had questioned my ability to manage motherhood alone, who had never once asked about my blog or my platform during its fledgling stages, was now asking me to use it to promote her friend's multi-level marketing scheme. And not even for her, but for a friend. As a favor. I took a deep breath, letting the initial surge of emotion pass. I needed to respond calmly, clearly. This was more than just a request for a promotional post. It was a test. A test of my boundaries, a test of whether I would still fall into the old pattern of people-pleasing and doing favors for family, even when they hadn't earned it. "Sarah," I began, my voice low but firm. "My platform is my business." I know, she rushed to say, "and it's great. But this would just be a small thing. Jessica's a friend. She's really struggling to get started." I understand that, I said, cutting gently through her words. But I only promote brands and products that I genuinely believe in, that I've researched, and that I think would genuinely benefit my community. I have a responsibility to the women who trust me. But you do brand deals for anyone, right? She pressed. Like that stroller company. Did you really need a stroller? The implication was clear. My professional partnerships were just random transactions, easily repurposed for personal favors. She still didn't see the work, the strategy, the integrity behind what I did. She only saw the visible outcome, the brand deals, and assumed they were easily dispensed. I partner with companies whose values align with mine and whose products I feel good recommending, I explained, trying to keep my tone even. It's not just about needing the product. It's about authenticity and building trust with my audience. And these are paid partnerships, Sarah. It's how I support my family. Right, money, she said, a slight hardening in her tone. So she'd have to pay you. Yes, that's how brand deals work, I stated plainly. But even then, I would need to vet the company and the product thoroughly. I wouldn't recommend something just because someone asked me to as a favor. There was a pause. I could almost hear her processing this, or perhaps resisting processing it. Oh, she said finally, the brightness gone from her voice, replaced by a thin coolness. Okay, I just thought, since it's family. Since it's family. The unspoken implication hung heavy. Family helps family. Family gets special treatment. Family gets favors, even when they offered no help in return. This was the core of it, wasn't it? The expectation that my hard-won success, built in the vacuum of their support, should now be available to them on demand, for free or discounted, simply because of our blood relation. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. They hadn't shown up for me when I was struggling and vulnerable, but they were certainly ready to show up now that I was successful and could be useful to them. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to keep it steady. This was the moment. This was where the years of hurt and dismissal coalesced into a single, necessary boundary. When I was pregnant with Lily, I was alone. I didn't have baby showers, I didn't have family checking in, I didn't have offers of help. I was told it wasn't a big deal. I built this platform, this community, this business, entirely on my own. With no support from the family who is suddenly asking for favors now that they see dollar signs. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Silence. I knew I had hit a nerve. I had finally voiced the unspoken truth, the imbalance, the deep well of hurt that had been the unlikely fertilizer for my growth. That's not fair, Sam, she finally whispered, her voice tight with defensiveness. We didn't understand. Didn't understand? I repeated, the tremor leaving my voice, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. Didn't understand that a pregnant woman needs support? Didn't understand that a new mother is overwhelmed? Or didn't understand because I wasn't married? Because my life didn't look exactly like yours? The questions weren't accusatory, merely statements of fact laid bare. It was different, she insisted weakly. Your situation was different. Yes, I agreed. It was. And I dealt with that difference alone. So, no, Sarah. I won't be doing a favor for your friend. My business is not a charity for people who didn't show up for me when I needed them most. The silence on the line stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. It felt like years of unspoken grievances, years of favoritism and dismissal, were compressed into that single moment. This wasn't just about a brand deal, it was about the fundamental lack of respect they had shown for my journey, my choices, and ultimately my worth. Fine, she spat out, the thin coolness replaced by overt hostility. Whatever, Samantha. Don't expect any favors from us then. And with that, she hung up. My hand stayed frozen, holding the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a mixture of residual fear and exhilarating liberation. I had done it. I had spoken my truth. I had set a boundary. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't met with understanding or apology. It was met with anger and a thinly veiled threat. But it was necessary. Tears came then, not of sadness, but of release. The pent-up emotions of years, of feeling small and overlooked and judged, finally surfaced. I cried for the pregnant woman who sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through pictures of a shower she never had. I cried for the new mother, bone-tired but determined, building a business in the quiet hours. I cried for the little girl who always felt like she had to try harder, be better, just to measure up to the golden child. But the tears weren't just sorrow. They were also tears of pride. Pride in the woman I had become. Pride in the life I had built, brick by painstaking brick. Pride in finding my voice and using it, even when it shook. The aftermath of that call wasn't dramatic, not in a loud, shouting way. It was marked by an increase in the already prevalent family silence. Sarah didn't call back. My mother, sensing the tension or perhaps hearing Sarah's version of events, became even more distant. Interactions were limited to brief, awkward encounters at mandatory family events. The topic of my work, my platform, my brand deals, became strictly taboo. It was a clear message: my success, earned outside their system, and without their help, was not welcome for discussion unless they could figure out how to benefit from it on their terms. There were subtle jabs, of course. Comments about being so busy with my internet work, questions framed to imply I was neglecting my daughter by focusing on my career, even though my platform allowed me immense flexibility. They couldn't attack the success itself directly, so they chipped away at its edges, trying to make me feel guilty for thriving. But those jabs no longer landed with the same force. I had faced the core of their disapproval, the casual dismissal of my worth, and I had survived it. More than survived, I had flourished. Their attempts to minimize my achievements now seemed pathetic, transparent. They were trying to reclaim control, to pull me back into the dynamic where I was the overlooked, slightly disappointing daughter/sister, simply because they couldn't comprehend or accept my independent success. I leaned heavily on my online community during this time, sharing vaguely about family dynamics, receiving floods of supportive messages from women who had faced similar situations. They reminded me of my strength, validated my feelings, and celebrated my boundaries. This chosen family, built on shared experience and empathy, was far more nourishing than the biological one that felt increasingly toxic. I also sought professional support. A therapist helped me unpack years of family dynamics, the subtle ways I had been conditioned to seek external validation, the people-pleasing tendencies that had left me vulnerable to exploitation. It was a difficult but necessary process, shedding the layers of expectation and insecurity that had clung to me for so long. I realized I had spent so much of my life trying to earn love and approval from people who were incapable of giving it in the way I needed. The freedom came from accepting that and redirecting my energy towards those who could. My relationship with my mother and sister settled into a polite, superficial distance. I saw them at holidays, exchanged pleasantries, kept conversations light and brief. The deep connection I had once longed for was gone, replaced by a quiet acceptance of the reality of our dynamic. It was sad, a mourning for the family I wished I had, but it was also peaceful. I wasn't expending energy trying to gain their approval or make them understand. I wasn't walking on eggshells, dreading the next dismissive comment. The financial independence my platform brought was a powerful catalyst for this peace. It removed the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, pressures they might have tried to exert if I had been struggling. My success wasn't just financial, it was a symbol of my resilience, my capability, my refusal to be defined by their limitations. Lily thrived, surrounded by my love and the extended network of support from friends and my online community. She saw a mother who worked hard, who was passionate about her work, who was building something meaningful. She saw a mother who was strong, independent, and unapologetically herself. That, more than anything, felt like the ultimate victory. I continued to grow my platform, expanding into new areas, launching programs, and speaking at events. Each step forward felt like a validation, a confirmation that I was on the right path. The unseen labor of those early days was now visible, valued, and impactful. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that humid Atlanta afternoon, the second pink line, the nervous excitement, and the crushing disappointment that followed. It was a painful beginning, forged in rejection and silence. But it was my beginning. And it led me here. Here, to a life I built, a community I nurtured, and a self I finally recognized and loved. The scar of that early betrayal remains, a reminder of how much I had to overcome. But it's no longer a source of shame. It's a testament to my strength. My family may never fully understand or acknowledge the depth of the hurt they caused, or the scale of the effort it took for me to rise above it. They may continue to view my success through the narrow lens of their own expectations and desires. But their perception no longer defines me. I learned that validation doesn't come from external approval, especially not from those who have a vested interest in keeping you small. It comes from within. It comes from setting boundaries, honoring your own experience, and building a life that aligns with your values, not theirs. My unconventional path wasn't a mistake or something to be ashamed of. It was my path. And it led me exactly where I needed to be. Stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. It wasn't a big deal to them. But it was everything to me. So, that's my story. Or at least, a significant part of it. The part about how sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, and how that hurt can become the unexpected foundation for building something incredible. I went from feeling completely unseen and unheard to creating a platform where thousands of women feel seen and heard every single day. The silence I faced pushed me to find my own voice, and now I use it to help others find theirs. It wasn't easy. There were tears, there was doubt, there were moments I wanted to give up. But looking back now, I wouldn't trade the lessons I learned for anything. They taught me resilience, they taught me the importance of true community, and most importantly, they taught me my own worth. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you've been dismissed, judged, or felt like your life choices weren't a big deal to the people who mattered most. If so, I want you to know you are not alone. Your feelings are valid. Your journey is valid. And you have the strength within you to rise above it, to build your own world, to find your own validation. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for a celebration that might never come. Start building your own table. Find your people. Trust your own strength. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like. It helps more women find this message. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to my channel for more real talk about motherhood, resilience, and building a life you love. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt dismissed by your family? How did you find your way through it? I read every single one. Remember, your story matters. You are a big deal. And you are so much stronger than you know.